Part 1. The Calm Before the Storm. The year was 2150, and Earth had long since taken its place among the stars. For nearly 3 decades, humanity had been a member of the Galactic Alliance, a confederation of species dedicated to mutual prosperity and the exchange of knowledge. It was an era of unprecedented peace and advancement for our species. The petty squabbles of nations had faded into memory, replaced by a unified purpose: to explore, to learn, and to grow alongside our new galactic neighbors. Captain Lyra Chen stood at the viewport of the UES Horizon, Earth's newest and most advanced exploratory vessel. At 32, she was young for such a prestigious command, but her record spoke for itself. A tactical prodigy with an uncanny ability to think outside the box, Lyra had risen through the ranks of the United Earth Space Force with meteoric speed. As the blue-green marble of Earth slowly shrank behind them, Lyra allowed herself a moment of reflection. This was to be the Horizon's maiden voyage, a diplomatic mission to the fringes of known space. Their goal: to make first contact with a newly discovered species that called themselves the Voidborn. "Captain," a voice called from behind her. Lyra turned to see her XO, Commander Jackson O'Neill, approaching with a datapad in hand. "Final systems check is complete. We're ready to make the jump to FTL whenever you give the word." Lyra nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Excellent work, Jack. Let's not keep our new friends waiting. Signal the crew to prepare for FTL jump." As O'Neill relayed her orders, Lyra took one last look at Earth. Something in her gut told her this mission would be different, that it would change everything. She pushed the feeling aside, chalking it up to first mission jitters. The jump to FTL was smooth, a testament to the Horizon's advanced Alcubierre drive. The ship slipped through the fabric of space-time like a needle through silk, covering vast distances in the blink of an eye. When they emerged from FTL 3 days later, they found themselves in an unfamiliar star system on the edge of the Orion Arm. "Sensors online," reported Lieutenant Zora Dawn from her station. "Scanning the system now." Lyra leaned forward in her command chair, eyes fixed on the main view screen. "What do we have, Lieutenant?" "It's strange, Captain," Zora replied, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm detecting a massive structure in orbit around the system's second planet. It's like nothing I've ever seen before." "On screen," Lyra ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that took everyone's breath away. Orbiting a barren, rocky world was what could only be described as a living city. Massive organic-looking structures pulsed with an irid violet light. Tendrils of energy coursed between the structures, forming a web of power that seemed to envelope the entire megastructure. "By all that's holy," O'Neill whispered. "What is that thing?" Before anyone could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English. "Greetings, travelers. We are the Voidborn. We welcome you to our humble home." Lyra exchanged a glance with O'Neill before responding. "This is Captain Lyra Chen of the United Earth Ship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking friendship and exchange of knowledge." There was a pause, and for a moment, Lyra feared they had somehow offended their hosts. Then the voice returned, a hint of amusement in its tone. "Peace, knowledge, friendship, such quaint concepts. Come then, humans, let us meet face to face, if such a term applies to beings such as us." A set of coordinates flashed across the ship's navigation system, indicating a docking port on the massive structure. "Well," Lyra said, straightening her uniform, "it seems we have an invitation. Commander O'Neill, assemble a landing party. Let's not keep our hosts waiting." The shuttle ride to the Voidborn structure was tense. As they approached, Lyra could see that what had appeared organic from a distance was in fact an impossibly advanced form of technology. The entire megastructure seemed to be composed of billions of nanomechanes, constantly shifting and reforming to create whatever the Voidborn needed. They docked with barely a shudder, the void-born technology seamlessly interfacing with their own. As the airlock cycled, Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay beyond. The door hissed open, revealing a cavernous chamber that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The floor, walls, and ceiling were indistinguishable, all flowing together in a riot of shifting colors and patterns. And there, in the center of it all, were the Voidborn. They were nothing like Lyra had imagined. Each Voidborn appeared as a swirling vortex of energy, vaguely humanoid in shape, but constantly shifting and changing. Tendrils of light extended from their forms, manipulating the nanomachines around them with casual ease. One of the Voidborn floated forward, its voice resonating directly in Lyra's mind. "Welcome, humans. We have long awaited this moment." Lyra stepped forward, her voice steadied despite the awe she felt. "On behalf of Earth and the Galactic Alliance, we thank you for your hospitality. We have so many questions." "As do we," the Voidborn interrupted. "You fascinate us, humans, so young, so full of potential." And yet, there was something in the Voidborn's tone that sent a chill down Lyra's spine. She tensed, her tactical mind already assessing potential threats and escape routes. "And yet," she prompted. "And yet, you align yourselves with the Alliance," the Voidborn continued. "A collection of stagnant races, content to wallow in their own mediocrity. You could be so much more." O'Neill stepped forward, his hand unconsciously moving towards his sidearm. "The Alliance has brought peace and prosperity to countless worlds. We're proud to be a part of it." The Voidborn's form pulsed with what might have been laughter. "Peace, prosperity, such limited ambitions. We offer you something far greater, humans. We offer you the stars themselves." With a gesture, the chamber around them transformed. Lyra and her team found themselves surrounded by a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Countless stars burned with vibrant life, but here and there, clusters of stars were dark, lifeless. "This is the galaxy as it stands now," the Voidborn explained. And this, the map shifted, more and more stars winking out until nearly half the galaxy was dark. "This is the galaxy in 100 of your years, if nothing changes. The universe is dying, humans. Entropy claims more stars every day, but we have found a way to stop it, to reverse it even. We can save the galaxy, but we need your help." Lyra's mind raced. If what the Voidborn were saying was true, it would change everything. But something didn't feel right. The way the Voidborn spoke of the Alliance, the casual dismissal of peace and prosperity. "What exactly are you proposing?" Lyra asked cautiously. The Voidborn's form seemed to smile, though it had no discernible face. "Join us, humans. With your adaptability, your drive, and our technology, we can remake the galaxy. We can defeat entropy itself. All we ask is that you sever your ties with the Alliance and help us. Convince the other races to see things our way." And there it was, the threat hidden behind the grand promises. Lyra's expression hardened. "I'm afraid we'll have to decline," she said firmly. "Earth is committed to the principles of the Alliance. We won't abandon our allies or our values." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. The Voidborn's form crackled with barely contained energy. "A pity," it said, all pretense of friendliness gone. "We had such hopes for your species, but if you will not join us willingly, perhaps a demonstration of our power will change your mind." Before Lyra could react, tendrils of energy lashed out, ensnaring her team. She felt a searing pain in her mind as the Voidborn attempted to force its way into her thoughts. But Lyra Chen hadn't become the youngest captain in Earth's fleet by being easily subdued. With a supreme effort of will, she fought back against the mental intrusion. To her surprise, she felt her resistance having an effect. The Voidborn recoiled, its form flickering with what might have been pain or surprise. Taking advantage of the moment, Lyra shouted to her team, "Fall back to the shuttle. Now." They ran, energy blasts sizzling the air around them. As they reached the airlock, Lyra turned back to face the Voidborn. "You say you want to save the galaxy, she called out. But at what cost? A galaxy without freedom, without diversity, without choice. That's not salvation. That's tyranny. And humanity will fight you every step of the way. The airlock slammed shut behind them. As their shuttle raced back to the horizon, Lyra knew that everything had changed. The peace they had known was over. A storm was coming, and humanity would need to be ready. As the horizon jumped to FTL, leaving the void-born system behind, Lyra stared out at the streaking stars. She had set out on a mission of peace and diplomacy. She was returning with a declaration of war. The calm was over. The storm had begun. Part 2. The First Strike. The UES horizon erupted from FTL in a flash of Cherenkov radiation, the fabric of space-time rippling in its wake. Captain Lyra Chen's voice, taut with urgency, rang out across the bridge. Status report. Commander O'Neill's fingers danced across his console. We've arrived at the Arcturus colony, Captain, but something's wrong. I'm not picking up any of the usual comm chatter. Lyra's stomach tightened. They'd pushed the Horizon's engines to the limit, racing to warn Earth and its colonies about the void-born threat. But even at maximum FTL, the journey had taken weeks. Weeks during which the void-born could have. She pushed the thought aside. On screen, she ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a scene of devastation that drew gasps from the bridge crew. The once thriving Arcturus colony, home to over 1 million human settlers, was in ruins. Massive craters scarred the planet's surface, while debris from destroyed orbital platforms drifted lifelessly in space. Life signs? Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lieutenant Dawn shook her head, her face pale. I'm detecting approximately 100,000 survivors, Captain. They're scattered across the southern continent, mostly in underground shelters. A heavy silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of consoles. Nearly 900,000 lives, snuffed out in what must have been a matter of hours. Lyra's hands clenched into fists. This was her fault. If she'd been faster, if she'd found a way to warn them. Captain, O'Neill's voice cut through her spiral of self-recrimination. We're picking up a distress signal from the surface. Audio only. Put it through, Lyra commanded, straightening in her chair. A voice, crackling with static and strained with exhaustion, filled the bridge. This is Governor Elias Reeves of Arcturus Colony. If anyone can hear this, they came out of nowhere. Ships like nothing we've ever seen. Our defenses were useless. They did something to our sun. It's dying. Please, if anyone's out there, help us. The message cut off abruptly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Lyra was the first to recover. Zara, scan the Arcturus star. Now. Lieutenant Dawn's fingers flew over her console. When she looked up, her face was ashen. Captain, the star's energy output has decreased by 30%. At this rate, it'll go nova within a month. The implications were staggering. A race capable of destabilizing a star at will. The Voidborn were even more dangerous than Lyra had feared. Prep our shuttles for immediate evacuation, Lyra ordered. We need to get as many survivors off-world as we can, and send a priority distress call to Earth. They need to know what's happened here. As the crew sprang into action, Lyra turned to O'Neill. Jack, I need you to take a team down to the surface. Find this Governor Reeves. If he survived the initial attack, he might have information we need. O'Neill nodded grimly. What about you, Captain? Lyra's eyes hardened as she looked back at the view screen, at the devastation wrought by the Voidborn. I'll be coordinating the evacuation from here and preparing for the fight to come. Because make no mistake, Commander, this is just the beginning. Hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Shuttle after shuttle ferried survivors up to the horizon and the handful of civilian ships that had answered their distress call. But for every person they saved, Lyra knew there were dozens more they couldn't reach in time. As the evacuation neared its end, O'Neill's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, we've found Governor Reeves. He's alive. but barely. And there's someone else here you need to meet. Intrigued despite the dire circumstances, Lyra made her way down to the medbay. There, she found O'Neill standing next to two beds. In one lay an older man, his face gaunt and his breathing labored. Governor Reeves, she presumed. But it was the occupant of the other bed that caught her attention. He was younger, perhaps in his late 30s, with unkempt dark hair and piercing green eyes that seemed to burn with an inner fire. Despite the cuts and bruises that covered his face, he sat up straighter as Lyra approached. "Captain," O'Neill said, "this is Dr. Elias Reeves, the governor's son. He's a physicist, and he has a theory about the Voidborn that you need to hear." Dr. Reeves didn't wait for an introduction. He launched into his explanation with the fervor of a man who knew time was running out. "They're energy vampires, Captain. The Voidborn. They don't just consume stellar energy. They need it to survive. That's why they attacked Arcturus. Our sun was their food source." Lyra's mind raced, connecting the dots. The map they showed us. The dark areas weren't dead zones. They were feeding grounds. Reeves nodded vigorously. "Exactly. But here's the thing. They're not invincible. Their energy absorption has a specific frequency. If we could disrupt that frequency, we could stop them from feeding." Lyra finished. "Maybe even hurt them. I call it the Stellar Shield," Reeves said, a hint of pride creeping into his voice despite the circumstances. "A network of satellites that could protect an entire star system. But I need resources, time." A proximity alarm cut through the air, interrupting their conversation. Lyra's comm unit crackled to life. "Captain, we've got incoming. Multiple Voidborn ships just dropped out of FTL." Lyra's blood ran cold. They'd lingered too long. "How many?" "At least a dozen, ma'am. They'll be in weapons range in 2 minutes." Lyra turned to O'Neill. "Get these people to the escape pods. Use the civilian ships as cover. We'll draw their fire." "Captain," Reeves protested, struggling to sit up. "My research, the Stellar Shield, it could save us all." For a moment, Lyra hesitated. The information Reeves possessed could indeed be the key to defeating the Voidborn. But if they stayed to fight, the chances of any of them surviving were slim. In that moment, Lyra Chen made a decision that would alter the course of the war to come. "Dr. Reeves, I'm entrusting you with humanity's future. Get to Earth. Find a way to make your stellar shield a reality. We'll buy you as much time as we can." Reeves opened his mouth to protest, but the look in Lyra's eyes stopped him. He nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of the responsibility being placed on his shoulders. As O'Neill led Reeves and the other survivors to the escape pods, Lyra raced back to the bridge. The main view screen showed a terrifying sight. A dozen Voidborn ships, each easily twice the size of the horizon, bearing down on them. "All hands, battle stations," Lyra called out, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her gut. "Helm, plot an evasive course. Weapons, target the lid ship. Let's show these energy vampires that humanity isn't an easy meal." The space around Arcturus erupted into chaos. Energy beams lanced out from the Voidborn ships, met by the horizon's more conventional, but no less deadly plasma torpedoes. Lyra's tactical genius shone as she maneuvered the horizon through the Voidborn formation, using their own massive size against them. But the horizon was outnumbered and outgunned. Warnings blared as system after system took damage. "Shields at 20%. Lieutenant Dawn called out. "We can't take much more of this, Captain." Lyra gritted her teeth. They'd bought enough time for the civilian ships and escape pods to jump to FTL, carrying Reeves and his vital knowledge to safety. Now they just had to survive long enough to follow them. "Divert all remaining power to engines," Lyra ordered. "Helm, get us out of here." The horizon limped away from the battle, its hull scared and burning. The Voidborn ships gave chase, their energy weapons carving swaths of destruction through space. Just as it seemed the horizon couldn't take another hit, space twisted around them, as the FTL drive engage. The stars stretched into lines, and then they were gone, leaving the ruins of Arcturus and the void-born fleet behind. On the bridge of the battered horizon, Captain Lyra Chen allowed herself a moment to slump in her chair, the adrenaline of battle fading to leave behind a bone-deep weariness. They had survived, but at a terrible cost. And she knew that this was only the first battle in what promised to be a long and brutal war. As the horizon hurtled through FTL towards Earth, carrying warnings of the void-born threat and the seeds of a possible defense, Lyra made a silent vow. The void-born had struck the first blow, but humanity would strike the last. No matter the cost, no matter how long it took, they would find a way to defeat this threat. The storm had broken, and in its fury, humanity would reveal its true strength. Part 3. Forging the Resistance. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Alliance Council was in uproar. Representatives from 100 different species argued in a cacophony of languages, their translator implants struggling to keep up with the flood of heated words. At the center of it all stood Captain Lyra Chen, her uniform still bearing the scorch marks from the Battle of Arcturus. Silence. The booming voice of High Counselor Jarkax, a towering insectoid being, cut through the chaos. As quiet settled over the chamber, he turned his compound eyes towards Lyra. Captain Chen, your warning is grave indeed. But surely you must understand the position you place us in. The Voidborn have not yet attacked any Alliance worlds. To take action now would be to invite their wrath upon us all. Lyra fought to keep her frustration in check. With all due respect, Counselor, their wrath is coming whether we invite it or not. The Voidborn see the entire galaxy as their feeding ground. If we don't stand together now, they'll pick us off one by one. A murmur ran through the assembled representatives. Lyra could see the fear in their eyes, the desperate hope that if they just stayed quiet, maybe the Voidborn would pass them by. The human speaks truth. A new voice rang out. All eyes turned to Kreldor, the Andromedan representative. His crystalline form sparkled as he floated forward. My people have long studied the patterns of stellar decay. What happened at Arcturus was no natural phenomenon. If the Voidborn can destabilize stars at will, none of us are safe. For a moment, hope flared in Lyra's chest. But then Jarkax spoke again, his voice heavy with resignation. Be that as it may, the Alliance Charter is clear. We cannot commit to military action unless a member world is directly threatened. I'm sorry, Captain Chen, but Earth and her colonies stand alone in this fight. The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. She had known it was a long shot, but to hear it stated so bluntly, she straightened her back, meeting Jarkax's gaze with steel in her eyes. Then know this, Counselor, when the Voidborn come for you, and they will come, humanity will remember who stood with us and who stood aside. With that, she turned on her heel and strode out of the chamber, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Back on Earth, the mood was grim but determined. The devastation of Arcturus had shocked humanity to its core, but rather than crumbling in fear, they had risen to the challenge. All across the planet and its remaining colonies, factories worked around the clock, churning out ships and weapons. Military enlistment had skyrocketed, with civilians from all walks of life volunteering to defend their species. In a hastily constructed laboratory complex beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elias Reeves worked feverishly on his Stellar Shield project. The fate of humanity rested on his shoulders, and he felt the weight of it with every passing moment. Dr. Reeves. A hesitant voice broke his concentration. He looked up to see one of his assistants, a young woman named Maya, holding out a datapad. The latest simulations are complete. I think we might have something. Elias snatched the pad, his eyes flying over the data. As he read, a wild hope began to bloom in his chest. This is, Maya, do you realize what this means? If these numbers are right, we could have a working prototype within months, not years. Maya's smile was tired but genuine. It's all thanks to your breakthroughs, Doctor. The way you've managed to harmonize quantum field theory with the energy signature of the Voidborn. It's revolutionary." Elias shook his head, his excitement tempered by the knowledge of what was at stake. "It won't mean anything if we can't scale it up in time. The Voidborn won't wait for us to be ready." As if summoned by his words, an alarm began to blare throughout the complex. Red emergency lights bathed the laboratory in an eerie glow. "What's happening?" Maya asked, fear evident in her voice. Before Elias could respond, the main screen in the lab flickered to life, showing the grim face of Admiral Helena Vask, the newly appointed head of Earth's Defense Forces. "Dr. Reeves," she said without preamble, "we've detected a Voidborn scout ship entering the Sol system. It's on a direct course for Mars." Elias felt his blood run cold. "How long?" "At their current speed, they'll reach Mars in less than 6 hours. We're scrambling every ship we have." But the Admiral's voice trailed off, the unspoken truth hanging heavy in the air. Earth's fledgling war fleet was no match for even a single Voidborn vessel. "Admiral," Elias said, his mind racing, "I need a ship, the fastest one you've got, and I need it now." Admiral Vask's eyes narrowed. "Doctor, I can't authorize." "With all due respect, Admiral," Elias cut her off, "in 6 hours, Mars could become another Arcturus. I have a prototype. It's untested. It might not work at all. But right now, it's the only shot we've got." For a long moment, Admiral Vask was silent, weighing the risks against the desperate need for any advantage. Finally, she nodded. "There's a ship waiting for you on the surface. Godspeed, Dr. Reeves. The fate of Mars is in your hands." As the screen went dark, Elias turned to Maya. "Get the prototype loaded up. We've got a planet to save." Across the solar system, on the bridge of the UES horizon, Captain Lyra Chen stood before her crew. The ship still bore the scars of the battle at Arcturus, hasty repairs barely holding it together. But the fire in the eyes of her crew burned brighter than ever. "I won't lie to you," Lyra said, her voice carrying to every corner of the ship. "We're outgunned, outmatched, and probably flying to our deaths. But Mars is counting on us. Earth is counting on us. All of humanity is counting on us to hold the line." She paused, looking each member of her crew in the eye. "I can't promise you victory. I can't even promise you survival. But I can promise you this. Today, we make the Voidborn bleed. Today, we show them that humanity will not go quietly into the night. Today, we fight not just for our lives, but for our very right to exist in this galaxy." A cheer went up from the crew, a sound of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Lyra allowed herself a small smile before turning to her XO. "Commander O'Neill, set course for Mars. Maximum burn. It's time to crash this party." As the Horizon and the rest of Earth's hastily assembled fleet raced towards Mars, Dr. Elias Reeves' ship pushed its experimental engines to the limit. The prototype stellar shield, a device no larger than a suitcase, hummed ominously in the cargo hold. On Mars itself, panic reigned. The colony's meager defenses were no match for a Voidborn ship, and evacuation efforts were hampered by the simple fact that there was nowhere to run. Millions of colonists huddled in underground shelters, praying for a miracle. High above the red planet, space itself seemed to twist and warp as the Voidborn scout ship dropped out of FTL. It hummed there for a moment, a dark blot against the stars, before beginning its inexorable approach towards Mars. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The Voidborn had come to feast on another star, to snuff out millions more lives in their insatiable hunger. But this time, humanity was ready to fight back. This time, they had a plan. As Earth's fleet emerged from FTL, weapons hot, and crews steeled for battle, Captain Lyra Chen's voice rang out across all channels. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. Engage the enemy. For Earth, for Mars, for humanity. Let's show these cosmic vampires that we're not on the menu." The void erupted in fire and fury as humanity launched its counterattack. Against the backdrop of Mars' rust-red surface, a battle would be fought that would determine the fate of not just one world, but of an entire species. The resistance had been forged in the fires of Arcturus. Now, it was time to see if it could withstand the inferno to come. Part 4. The Turning Point. The space above Mars blazed with the fury of battle. Earth's fleet, a patchwork armada of hastily upgraded civilian ships and prototype military vessels, swarmed around the massive void-borne scout ship like angry hornets. But for all their valor, for all their desperate cunning, they were little more than an annoyance to the cosmic predator they faced. On the bridge of the UES Horizon, Captain Lyra Chen watched with growing despair as another of her ships winked out of existence, vaporized by a casual swipe of the Voidborn's energy tendrils. Status report. She barked, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. Commander O'Neill's voice was grim. We've lost the Thunderchild and the Excalibur. The Magellan's engines are crippled. Our fleet is down to 60% strength, Captain. Lyra's fists clenched at her sides. They were dying out there. And for what? They couldn't even scratch the Voidborn's hull. But every second they bought was a second that Mars wasn't being torn apart, a second that Dr. Reeves might use to. Captain. Lieutenant Dolan's excited shout cut through the gloom. I'm picking up a new energy signature. It's Dr. Reeves' ship. Lyra's head snapped up, hope flaring in her chest. On screen. The main view screen flickered, showing a small, sleek vessel streaking towards Mars. It was flying erratically, clearly pushed far beyond its design limits. Open a channel, Lyra ordered. Dr. Reeves' face appeared on the screen, his features drawn with exhaustion and stress. Captain Chen, thank God you're still alive. I need you to clear me a path to the Voidborn ship. I have to get close for this to work. Lyra didn't hesitate. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Concentrate fire on Sector 7G. Give everything you've got. We need to open a hole for Dr. Reeves. The remains of Earth's fleet responded with a will, pouring fire into a single point on the Voidborn's defenses. For a moment, it seemed futile. Then, miraculously, a gap appeared. Now, Doctor. Lyra shouted. Go. Reeves' ship shot forward, threading the needle between beams of destructive energy. It closed rapidly on the Voidborn vessel, which seemed to finally take notice of this gnat daring to approach it. Come on, Lyra muttered, watching as the Voidborn turned its attention to Reeves' ship. Energy began to build around the alien vessel, preparing to swat this newest annoyance. Just as it seemed Reeves would be vaporized, his voice crackled over the comm. Activating stellar shield. Now. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a wave of energy unlike anything Lyra had ever seen burst forth from Reeves' ship. It washed over the Voidborn vessel, and where it touched, the alien ship flickered. My God, O'Neill breathed. What did he do? Lyra leaned forward, her eyes wide. He cut them off. Look. The Voidborn ship was thrashing now, its energy tendrils lashing out wildly. But where before they had carved through Earth ships like tissue paper, now they seemed weakened, unfocused. All ships, Lyra called out, her voice ringing with newfound hope. The Voidborn are vulnerable. Concentrate all fire on their central mass. Let's finish this. Earth's battered fleet rallied, pouring everything they had left into the attack. The Voidborn ship, cut off from its energy source by Reeves' stellar shield, couldn't withstand the assault. Cracks began to appear in its hull, spreading like a spider web across its surface. With a silent scream that nonetheless echoed in the minds of every human present, the Voidborn ship shattered. The explosion lit up the Martian sky like a second sun, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, from every ship in the fleet, from the shelters on Mars below, a cheer went up. A cheer of relief, of survival, of victory against impossible odds. On the bridge of the horizon, Lyra allowed herself a moment to slump in her chair, the tension of battle draining away. They had done it. They had won. But the victory was short-lived. As the adrenaline faded, the true cost of the battle became clear. Over half of Earth's fleet destroyed. Thousands of lives lost. And this was just a scout ship. What would happen when the full Voidborn armada arrived? Hours later, in a hastily convened war council on Mars, Lyra stood beside Dr. Reeves as he explained the workings of the stellar shield to Earth's military leadership. The principle is simple, Reeves said, his excitement breaking through his exhaustion. We create a field that resonates at the exact inverse frequency of the Voidborn's energy absorption. It doesn't just block them, it actively disrupts their ability to feed on stellar energy. Admiral Vask nodded slowly. And you're sure this can be scaled up? To protect entire planets? Reeves hesitated. In theory, yes. But the power requirements would be astronomical. We'd need to basically rebuild our entire energy infrastructure from the ground up. Then that's what we'll do, a new voice said. All heads turned to see the President of the United Earth Government enter the room. Her face was grim but determined. Whatever it takes, whatever resources you need, Dr. Reeves, Earth will provide it. As the meeting continued, plans being made and resources allocated, Lyra found herself drawn to a window overlooking the Martian landscape. The red planet, so nearly lost, now stood as a symbol of hope. Humanity had bloodied the nose of a cosmic horror. They had proven that the Voidborn could be hurt, could be killed. But Lyra knew this was just the beginning. The real war was yet to come. A soft step behind her made her turn. It was Kreldor, the Andromedan representative she had met in the Galactic Alliance Council. Your people fought bravely, Captain Chen, he said, his crystalline form glittering in the Martian sunlight. You have accomplished what many thought impossible. Lyra's eyes narrowed. I thought the Alliance had washed its hands of us. Kreldor's form rippled in what might have been a shrug. The Council, in its wisdom, chose inaction. But not all of us agree with that choice. What Dr. Reeves has created, it changes everything. What are you saying? Lyra asked, a spark of hope kindling in her chest. I'm saying, Captain, that while the Alliance may not officially support you, there are those of us who see the bigger picture, who understand that if the Voidborn are not stopped, all life in the galaxy is doomed. Kreldor's voice lowered. We can offer support. Not openly, but resources, intelligence, perhaps even ships and volunteers. Enough to make a difference. Lyra felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They weren't alone. The galaxy hadn't abandoned them entirely. Thank you, she said simply. Kreldor nodded. Do not thank me yet, Captain. The real battle is still to come. The Voidborn will not take this defeat lightly. They will return in force, and when they do, we'll be ready. Lyra finished, her voice filled with determination. As she turned back to the window, Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. With the stellar shield, with allies, however secret, among the galactic community, they had a chance. A real chance not just to survive, but to win. The Voidborn had awakened humanity to its true potential. They had forced Earth to reach for the stars not in peace, but in desperate self-defense. But in doing so, they had created something they could never have anticipated. A united human race, backed into a corner and ready to fight with everything they had. The storm was far from over, but for the first time since the Voidborn threat had emerged, Lyra felt a glimmer of true hope. Humanity had weathered the first strike. They had forged their resistance, and now, against all odds, they had found their turning point. The next move would be the Voidborns, but whatever came, Earth would be ready. The galaxy was about to learn just how fierce humanity could be when everything they loved was on the line. Humanity's finest hour. The Sol system buzzed with frenetic activity. In the 2 years since the Battle of Mars, humanity had undergone a transformation unlike anything in its history. The entire system had become a fortress, with massive stellar shield generators orbiting every planet and major moon. Earth's shipyards worked around the clock, churning out vessels equipped with Dr. Reeves' revolutionary technology. But it wasn't just humanity's military that had evolved. The very fabric of human society had changed, united in a way that would have been unthinkable before the void-born threat. Old rivalries and petty disputes had been set aside in the face of extinction. Every human, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, understood the stakes. This was a fight for survival, for the very future of their species. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, the most advanced warship ever constructed by human hands, Captain Lyra Chen stood before a holographic display of the Sol system. Her eyes, which had seen so much death and destruction, now shone with determination. "Status report," she called out, her voice carrying the weight of command that had only grown heavier over the past 2 years. Commander O'Neill, his face now bearing a scar from a close call in a skirmish with a void-born patrol, stepped forward. "All stellar shield generators are online and at full power, Captain. The fleet is in position. Earth's surface-to-space defenses are primed and ready." Lyra nodded, allowing herself a small smile. They were as ready as they could be. But would it be enough? As if in answer to her unspoken question, alarms began to blare throughout the ship. Lieutenant Doan's voice rang out, tense but controlled. "Multiple FTL signatures detected. It's them, Captain. The Void-born Armada has arrived." Lyra took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, zooming out to show the outer edges of the solar system. There, emerging from the void like a nightmare-given form, was the Void-born fleet. Hundreds of ships, each larger and more terrifying than the scout they had faced at Mars, moved with singular purpose towards Earth. "Open a channel to all Earth forces," Lyra commanded. As the comm officer signaled his readiness, she spoke, her voice carried to every human ship and station in the system. "This is Captain Lyra Chen. The moment we've prepared for is upon us. The Void-born have come, thinking to find an easy meal. Instead, they'll find humanity standing united, ready to fight for our very existence. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Every world, every life in this galaxy depends on what we do here today. Let's show these cosmic horrors that humanity is not to be trifled with. For Earth, for all life in the galaxy." The space between Earth and the oncoming Void-born Armada erupted in a dazzling display of weapons fire. Human ships, their hulls gleaming with the latest in stealth and shield technology, darted between the lumbering Void-born vessels. They struck with pinpoint accuracy, targeting weak points identified through countless hours of analysis of previous encounters. But the Void-born were not so easily defeated. Their energy tendrils lashed out, carving through space and shredding human ships that were too slow to evade. The battle quickly devolved into a chaotic melee, with individual duels playing out across the solar system. On the Defiant, Lyra coordinated the human defense with a mixture of tactical brilliance and desperate improvisation. She used the gravity wells of planets and moons to slingshot her ships into advantageous positions, always staying one step ahead of the Void-born's devastating attacks. Hours passed, and the tide of battle ebbed and flowed. The space around Earth was littered with the debris of both human and Void-born ships. But slowly, inexorably, the Void-born pressed closer to their goal, Earth itself. As the main Void-born fleet engaged the bulk of Earth's defenses, a smaller group of ships slipped past, making a beeline for the planet. Lyra saw it happen and knew in her gut that this was it, the moment that would decide everything. "Helm, set an intercept course," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "All power to engines and forward shields. We're going to stop them here, no matter the cost." The Defiant shot forward, pushing its experimental engines to the limit. They caught up to the Void-born strike force just as it reached Earth's orbit, where the planet's last line of defense, the stellar shield, hummed with power. What followed was a battle unlike any in human history. The Defiant, joined by a handful of other ships that had managed to break away from the main fight, engaged the Void-born at point-blank range. Energy weapons flared, missiles streaked across the void, and ships on both sides were torn apart in spectacular explosions. Through it all, the stellar shield held, its energy field flickering, but never failing as it repelled the Voidborn's attempts to reach the planet below. But Lyra knew it couldn't last forever. The shield was draining power at an alarming rate, and the Voidborn ships, though wounded, kept coming. As the Defiant shuddered under another hit, alarms blaring and smoke filling the bridge, Lyra made a decision. Helm, plot a collision course with the Lid Voidborn ship. Divert all remaining power to the stellar shield emitters. O'Neill's eyes widened as he realized what she was planning. Captain, that's suicide. Lyra met his gaze, her resolve unshakable. If we don't stop them here, Earth falls. And if Earth falls, humanity falls. I'm not letting that happen. Not while I still draw breath. She turned to address the entire bridge crew. It has been my greatest honor to serve with each and every one of you. What we do here today will echo through history. We fight not just for ourselves, but for every sentient being in this galaxy who deserves the right to exist free from the Voidborn's hunger. Abandon ship, that's an order. I'll finish this myself. For a moment, no one moved. Then O'Neill stepped forward. With all due respect, Captain, go to hell. We started this fight together. We'll end it together. One by one, the bridge crew nodded their agreement. Lyra felt a swell of pride, so intense it threatened to overwhelm her. This, she realized, was humanity at its finest. Not just her crew, but every human fighting in this battle. Facing extinction, they had chosen to stand and fight, not just for themselves, but for all life everywhere. Very well, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Let's finish this. For Earth, for humanity, for life itself. The Defiant, engines flaring one last time, drove straight for the heart of the Voidborn formation. Its stellar shield, pushed beyond its limits, carved a path through the energy tendrils that tried to stop it. Voidborn ships, realizing too late the humans' intent, tried to veer away. In the last moments before impact, Lyra thought she saw something in the movements of the Voidborn ships. Was it fear? Could these cosmic monstrosities actually feel fear? The thought filled her with a fierce joy. The Defiant struck the Lid Voidborn ship with the force of a small sun going nova. The stellar shield, pushed to its absolute limit, interacted with the Voidborn's energy field in a way no one could have predicted. The resulting explosion was visible from the surface of Earth, a new star briefly flaring to life in the sky. The shockwave rippled outward, catching the nearby Voidborn ships in its wake. But it didn't stop there. Something about the interaction between the stellar shield and the Voidborn energy had created a chain reaction. Ship after ship in the Voidborn fleet began to detonate, each explosion feeding the next. In the space of a few minutes, the mighty Voidborn armada, which had threatened to devour the entire galaxy, was reduced to scattered debris and fading energy signatures. As the light of the explosions faded, an eerie quiet fell over the Sol system. Surviving human ships, their crews scarcely able to believe what they had just witnessed, began to regroup. On Earth, and on every human colony and ship, celebrations erupted. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had stood against the cosmic horror of the Voidborn and emerged victorious. In the days that followed, as the full scope of their victory became clear, humanity found itself in a new position. The secret allies who had aided them now stepped into the light. The Galactic Alliance, shamed by their earlier inaction, extended an offer not just of membership, but of leadership to Earth. Humanity, tempered by the fire of an existential war, was now seen as the saviors of the galaxy. Their stellar shield technology would be shared, ensuring that no species would ever again fall victim to the Voidborn's hunger. But even as they celebrated, as they looked forward to a brighter future, humans everywhere remembered the cost. They remembered the worlds lost, the lives sacrificed. They remembered the crew of the Defiant and Captain Lyra Chen, who had given everything to secure this victory. In the years to come, humanity would stride out into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive upstarts was now the shield against which any future threats would break. The Voidborn had sought to devour humanity. Instead, they had forged it into something greater than anyone could have imagined. As humans looked up at the stars, they did so not with fear, but with determination. Whatever the galaxy held in store, they would face it together. For they had faced the darkness, and in humanity's finest hour, they had become the light.